UFC 312 is in Australia this weekend. The main event, really interesting bout between Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland, with Tatiana Suarez getting her championship opportunity in the co-main event. After that, it dries up pretty quick, I'll be honest with you, but there are still a couple of fighters to watch on UFC 312. We will start with Jimmy Crute. He is facing Rodolfo Bellato, sorry. At one time, Crute was actually a really interesting light heavyweight prospect, and he's moving up, and he's moving up, and he's moving up, and then he has a fight with Anthony Smith. He loses that. Then he loses to Jamal Hill, and now all of a sudden, Jimmy Crute hasn't won since 2020. He will have a distinct home field advantage going into this bout, and I think at this point, a run to a title, like he's a couple years away from being a couple years away if he wants to get back on that train. But just to get back in the win column, just to get moving, this is a very important fight, I think, for him. Going up against Bellato, who is not a big name or anything like that. This is the type of fight that if this one doesn't happen, then I would imagine that the UFC probably looks elsewhere for their Aussie content, and Jimmy Crute is looking for a PFL or a GFL contract if the second one there ever actually happens. Moving on, in the welterweight division, we also have a fighter kind of similar to Crute in Jake Matthews. He'll be facing Francisco Prado, and it's kind of the same story as Crute, only at welterweight. He hasn't just... This one, it's different because there was a lot of potential, strong loss, and he hasn't had that big loss. It's not like there's been a big step up for him and then he's lost. It's just been kind of, okay, he's won two and he's lost one, and he's won two and then he's lost one. And now we're alternating and doing all these things. And he just hasn't really seemed to be able to find that stride in the UFC. And now he's 30. And again, I'm not saying, I don't think this is one where he needs a win to keep his job or anything like that. But we're also at a point where I don't see a title run in his future. And when I just think of going back to when he was starting out as a prospect in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, that seems insane to me that he's not even going to get like a title eliminator thing or anything like that. So it's a bit of a surprise the way that career has kind of turned out for one Jake Matthews. And the last one, it's Wang Kong, who will be facing Bruna Brazil. I'm interested to see how Kong responds. She's coming off of her first loss of her career at 6-1. She's won a couple of big fights. She's been a champion in other promotions and things of that nature. She's going to need a response here, and I'll be interested to see how she handles that coming off of the first defeat in her career. So those are a few of the fighters to watch outside of the main event at UFC 312. More fight coverage coming up here this weekend this week leading up to the weekend. We'll look at some of the fights that have been announced recently in the UFC, and then coming up on the weekend preview, it'll be the UFC 312 breakdown as we look at the main fights there.